And so just in the pursuit of world records and getting to be a better freediver, I naturally kind of devised, evolved, researched, and discovered these techniques that revolve around using the breath and using the mind to defend against stress and anxiety.
My name is Michael Rubino. I'm on a personal mission to make sure you don't get sick inside your own home.
I knew there was something wrong. I'm just so relieved there's something that you can do about it.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me with another episode of Never Been Sicker. I'm your host, Michael Rubino, and today's amazing guest is William. William, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to be here with us.
My pleasure, Michael. Good to be here.
Now, I would love for you to kind of share your journey a little bit, who you are, what you do, the problem that you've encountered, and what you're trying to solve.
Sure, yeah. So just very quickly, I'm a free diver, which means I hold my breath and try and go as deep as I possibly can, swimming down with no assistance. And I have the world record in the purest discipline of freediving, which is without fins, without any assistance of any kind. That world record is 102 meters or 333 feet. And recently I've obviously a free dive can, as most people might imagine, is kind of like a stressful thing because you know you're going to take one breath and it's going to sustain you for depth deeper than the height of the Statue of Liberty, down and back. And any kind of panic, any nervousness underwater translates to using more oxygen and so more likelihood to fail. So we have to be in complete control of the mind and body. And in order to do that, we use techniques that revolve both around breathing and mental techniques. And what I've seen is those same techniques have huge application to the kinds of pressures and stresses we face in our regular lives, like stress at work, anxiety at home, social anxiety, just depression in general. All of these can be dealt with so much better when you have the right kind of foundation of breathing and mental control.
That's really amazing work. And I just for people that might not understand what free diving is, you're above water, you take a deep breath and you swim underwater. And for your case, to have the world record, right? You have to go a certain amount of feet underwater, in this case, 102 meters. And then you have to get back above water to receive more oxygen, right? And failing could mean, something as simple between life and death. Is that correct?
Yes, it's we have safety systems. So obviously, if you do push it in any sport, you're going to be pushing the limits. If you push it, then you will black out underwater. And that sounds dangerous, but in our case, we have safety divers, typically safety free divers, who escort us in those last few feet to the surface. And that's where you're most likely to have a blackout. And so if something happens, then they can bring you to the surface. You won't have water in your lungs, and you are resuscitated fairly quickly. So obviously we try and avoid that, but if it should
Right.
happen, it's not. It shouldn't be a fatality. So yeah, there's dangers in the sport, but it's actually, as far as extreme sports go, it's a relatively safe one, I feel.
No, it's good. I mean, see, I've never done free diving, so it's good to understand as someone who's, on the outside looking in on this particular subject to know that there are safety precautions in place. That's really cool. But still, it seems there's risks, right? You could panic and things can go wrong. And so, as you mentioned, you have to be very calm in going through this. So I wouldn't say it's doesn't have some level of danger, right? But it's really cool that you were able to beat the record and now hold the world record. I mean, obviously that takes a lot of practice and training, I am sure.
Yeah, it's all about just kind of exploring limits, and in this case, the human aquatic potential, and seeing how aquatic we can be as a species. And surprisingly, we can do pretty well. Not as good as dolphins or whales, of course, but we can, like in the space of one lifetime, we can kind of evolve a fairly solid mobility under the water, several minutes, 100 meters. It's not too shabby.
And we're here to be clear because obviously this general population across the globe has never been sicker than we are today, which is a very unfortunate thing to talk about, but necessary, right? Because if we're not aware of something, we can't make the changes that we need to get better. We're talking about 60% of the global population dealing with at least one chronic condition, 40% dealing with multiple chronic conditions, but also mental health issues have been undoubtedly on the rise.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
anything you could speak to that effect, because obviously this is a pretty big problem that you're helping to solve in some capacity.
Sure. Yeah. Definitely the mental health is almost, you can almost classify it as a pandemic in recent years because most of the figures have doubled just in the last 20 years. I mean, forget about going back to the 50s. It's more than 10x cases of anxiety, like critical anxiety and stress disorders since the 50s and 60s. But yeah, just in the last 20 years, we've seen more than a doubling of these cases. And there's a lot of different causes that you can put that down to. Social media obviously is a big one. Um, kind of changing lifestyles, being more indoors, more like attached to screens. Possibly air quality is a big one as well. But we're definitely seeing like skyrocketing numbers of mental health problems.
And it sounds like to me that you've learned through, your passion for diving, that there are applications in some of the techniques that you explore with diving that could actually be really helpful to help with some of the mental illness that we're struggles that we're experiencing. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah. I could speak all day about these techniques, and it's my kind of passion now because I've seen just how powerful they are, just how much application they have in these kind of in stress and anxiety, dealing with the pressures of life. And in my experience, stress and anxiety, it affects us physically as well as mentally, right? Like that we feel the tension in our body, our heart rate goes up. We might start kind of sweating and get palpitations and everything. So there's a physical side, but there's also the mental kind of swarm of negative thoughts that accompanies stress or anxiety. So because there's both sides, we have to have a defense that is both physical and mental. And luckily, we're equipped with very adequate defenses. We can actually very quickly like reverse engineer a physical state of calmness just by using the breath, by activating the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the kind of rest and digest, the calm, serene um, aspect of our nervous system. We can kind of tap into that almost instantaneously with a certain type of breathing that's nasal, diaphragmatic. It's not too, pretty much anyone can do it. So that's the physical side. And then mentally, we can interrupt those recursive negative thoughts by just shifting our attention to like our attitude towards those thoughts and noticing is the word that I normally use, noticing what thoughts are and recognizing them as just data information that's coming to your awareness like all the other contents of our consciousness. So there's a shift that can happen that kind of sets you to the side of your negative thinking where you're no longer kind of drowning in the flurry of negative thoughts. And that's super powerful as well. So with these two defenses, we can actually exit from stress and anxiety, but it's not the end of the equation because we have to make it subconscious. And that's the game changer with the system that I teach, the mental immune system, is it programs it into your subconscious mind. So just like your physical immune system that responds to pathogens, viruses and stuff without you having to actually direct it, just like that, you can have a mental immune system that responds to the virtual viruses, the stresses and anxieties that we encounter, and responds to it without you having to like engage in actual technique. It just does it behind the scenes. That's the real game changer.
I love that idea. I mean, to actually have this mental immune system, I think is a brilliant idea, and to have a formulated process that can help people accomplish that. It sounds tremendous. How did you come up with this idea in the first place?
It's I always say that freediving is like a test tube experiment in stress management because, as I explained before, like if you imagine yourself floating there on the surface, you know that you're going to take a breath in like a couple of minutes time. You're going to take one full breath. That breath has to sustain you for 4 minutes, not just of like being relaxed, but 4 minutes of hard swimming underwater, down and back. And any even vestigial panic or anxiety during that dive is going to increase your oxygen consumption. And so there'll be a feedback loop. If you feel yourself panicking or getting anxious, you'll know that that's negative, and so it'll make you more panicky, and so it will kind of like feedback on itself, right? So you have to be able to stay in perfect control throughout the whole entire dive. And so just in the pursuit of world records and getting to be a better freediver, I naturally kind of devised, evolved, researched, and discovered these techniques that revolve around using the breath and using the mind to defend against stress and anxiety, to the point where like I can be floating there, I'm about to attempt a world record, and I'm taking that last breath of air in, and the thought comes into my head, this is the last breath you're ever going to take. Like, this is it, you're going to die down there, kind of thing. And that if that thought pops into your head, there's two directions you can go. You can kind of go down the rabbit hole of why is that? Why am I going to die? Like, what's going to happen? What have I done wrong? What have I messing up? And kind of like engaging in it. Or you can retain your serenity and calmness and just see that thought as pure data information coming from one part of your brain to another, and refuse to kind of engage with it or be impacted by it. And so in the pursuit of these world records and freediving, I've developed these techniques, and then I started to see that like people started to comment like you're always calm in any situation, and I noticed that I was using these same techniques when things got difficult in personal life and business and anything else, and they were working just as well there as they do in sport and freediving. So that's when I started to think, well, maybe other people can benefit from these same techniques.
Oh, I think undoubtedly. I mean, being calm. Uh, I think we've all experienced as human beings. You make better decisions when you're calm and reflective than you do when you're anxious and, in fear or in grief or any sort of negative emotion, right? And then being able to be positive can be difficult with the amount of distractions we have in life today. The thoughts that pop up, I love how you describe that as data or information that comes to you, your awareness, because it's true. It's data, it's information. Sometimes that information can be negative, sometimes it can be positive. And I know me firsthand. I personally have been consumed by my own thoughts, and usually when I'm consumed by my own thoughts, they're negative thoughts, they're not positive ones. And so it's really cool that you've been able to obviously navigate that not only from your passion as a free diver, but be able to translate that into real life and practice that in everyday situations. I think is tremendous, and I want to applaud you for that because that's really great. And you're teaching people how to do this with your method, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So anyone can train themselves with it online via the mentalimmunesystem.com. I also coach people. You mentioned kind of being able to perform better and think clearer, and this is something that I've seen with like I coach a bunch of people from all kind of walks of life. One is a hedge fund investor who's kind of managing portfolios of billions of dollars, and another is a top 20 tennis player, CEOs, entrepreneurs. And yeah, when you are able to stay calm in those stressful situations, then you can engage your prefrontal cortex much better. And we can actually see this with brain imagery. And so you can think clearer and make better decisions. So we've got this kind of like operating system that's left over from 10,000 years ago when the main threat was like a saber-toothed tiger, cave bear, or the neighboring tribe, right? And so we needed to be able to respond to stress with fight and flight, with adrenaline, with being able to combat or run away very quickly. Nowadays, almost all of our stressors or anxieties revolve around situations that don't benefit from that approach. If you're having an argument with your spouse and you start to kind of get adrenaline and cortisol coursing through your veins, you're not going to be able to deal with that situation as well. The same thing in the boardroom, or if you're kind of public speaking and you're nervous in that situation. None of these scenarios do you benefit from fight or flight. And so we need to be able to replace that old operating system with a new one where in those high pressure situations, we stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, the calming nervous system, and stay, yes, serene and engaged with the prefrontal cortex so we can perform better.
I love how you say we have this old operating system. It's this fight or flight. It's this stimulus response mechanism, and we need to get away from that and forward to a new operating system where we're in the moment and we can make clear, level-headed decisions, the best decisions with the right intentions. Because for like I told you this before, I've been there where you're in a panic. You've got to make a decision. You're not in a good place to make the best decision, right? And so I love that. Is there any exercises that you could take us through here on this podcast, or other people that might be listening in could actually experience with us firsthand to kind of get an understanding of what this actual method is? What are some of the techniques so they can look forward to checking you out?
Yeah, absolutely. The techniques are fairly simple, but it does take a while to explain them. And critically, you have to kind of know what's going on behind the scenes in order to justify you using that technique. Like if I just tell you breathe like this and think like this, you can do it, but without the actual kind of reasoning behind it, it's not as powerful. But I'll give you and your audience a taste, which is one of the most powerful things you can do when you notice you're in any situation that's stressful. And in particular, the smaller the better. Don't worry so much about like the most kind of critical, high pressure, stressful situations, because addressing it there to begin with is always going to be difficult. But when you notice like you're stuck in traffic, or you're having like a minor argument, or you have to talk to in front of like a small group of people and that's making you a little bit nervous, in any of these kind of like small situations, you're going to be much better equipped to kind of just take on a very easy technique, which is what I call a 3-second hold. So all you have to do is hold your breath for 3 seconds, but after an exhale. So just, you don't have to necessarily like empty your lungs, like breathe out everything, but just don't consciously take a breath. Just like make sure your lungs are neutral or empty, and hold there for 3 seconds for just a slow count of 3. And in those 3 seconds, you're consciously preparing your next breath and your next thought. So it's just like a 3-second window where you say, okay, relax, and my next breath, I'm going to breathe through my nose and breathe into my belly, which uses the diaphragm, which activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So that's the calming breath. And at the same time, you're going to just ask yourself the question, I wonder what my next thought is going to be. And just that process of kind of noticing that you are thinking, noticing your thoughts, takes you one step to the side of them. So you're seeing those thoughts as information that's coming to your awareness. So therefore you are not amongst them, but you are observing those thoughts. And that often is the most powerful kind of first step. So yeah, just 3 seconds, just kind of slowly empty your lungs, and hold for a count of 3 seconds. And in that 3 seconds, prepare your next thought and your next breath.
All right, I'm going to do this right now. So I'm going to exhale.
Yeah, you can breathe in first if you want before the exhale. Back in through your nose into your belly.
Very calming.
Yeah, and
It was
it's
very calming.
so the diaphragmatic part of the breath, breathing into the belly, is really important. If I just kind of show you the difference, when we breathe into our chest, it's kind of like a gasping breath. That makes us more nervous. There's a feedback response, and I'll go into it, but like stretch receptors in these muscles that tell the brain I'm nervous. When you breathe into your belly, so watch this, I have my hand on my stomach, I'm just going to breathe into my belly. That's the only part that's moving. So it's a diaphragmatic muscle that's moving down and up with each breath. And when you breathe like that, you actually send a signal to the brain, we're calm, everything is good. And so then the brain's like, okay, well, in that case, we can have positive thoughts. We can kind of engage this part of the brain. And so there's a positive feedback loop. Instead of going down that negative spiral with the gasping kind of nervous breath, you're instead engaging a positive upward spiral with the diaphragmatic breath. And so prepare, like in those 3 seconds, just tell yourself, okay, I'm going to breathe deep into my dome, into my diaphragm on the next breath. If you feel your shoulders go up, move up, that's an upper breath. It doesn't need to be a full, huge breath, just needs to be a breath into your stomach. So the hand on your chest shouldn't move at all. It's just the hand in your stomach that goes out and in.
So I've just been breathing like both ways to see the difference, and you're right. It makes like a massive difference in this calming effect in breathing through the gut versus in the diaphragm versus actually the chest and the lungs. Very interesting. And one of the things that I think occurred for me is I just realizing I'm in control at that point. Yeah, I'm aware that I am in control. I'm aware that I'm taking that breath, as opposed to it being more automatic, like a stimulus response. Like I feel like I went from like, being an effect of this function of the body to like being cause over this function of the body. And not only was that calming, but I felt like it made me feel more in control. And I feel like that in itself is such a great thing to have awareness of.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's the game changer I talked about before, is when that becomes subconscious. So then you will reach a point, once you've re-scripted how you respond to stress, you'll reach a point where you'll be in some kind of a situation, maybe it's an argument or something, and at the same time, or even before you notice that it's a stressful or normally stressful situation, you'll notice that your breathing's changed, that you're breathing kind of like more into the belly, into your foundation, and that you are completely calm. And you'll be like, hang on a minute, normally I would be like steaming in this kind of a situation, but now my head is clear, I feel my body feels calm, and it's because you've engaged this breathing instinctively as a response to that stress stimuli. So before you even kind of consciously realize you're in that situation, your body has reacted to it in the same way as we react to viruses before we even realize we're fighting them.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant, and for you may not realize this as much as I do because I'm in this every single day. But there's a lot of people that are listening to this podcast that are dealing with an anxiety and depression from environmental factors, like poor air quality, or maybe certain toxins they're getting from their food or water supply. Environmental issues that affect the human body, whether it's coming into the body or on the body, coming through inhalation, which then leads to ingestion if it's a small enough particle, or even something that you can get exposure to through dermal exposure. And so, obviously, people coming in and understanding how to reprogram and get back into control, both consciously and then leading to this subconscious control of your thoughts and emotions, I think is such a valuable tool for people listening to this. So it's really exciting that you figured this out in your passion as a diver, and have been able to actually systematize it in a way where other people can reap the same benefits that you had through all the research you've done. And so where can people go to kind of start this journey and learn the systems that you have put together?
Sure, yeah. The main hub is just the mentalimmunesystem.com. And currently we're actually offering a 15-day free trial for anyone to take the system. And there's also like a community within it where I'm doing like a weekly masterclass call. There's like a chat group and all the other kind of aspects. So there's like a support network within this community of the mental immune system to help people to get over the finish line where they've successfully kind of reprogrammed their response to stress and anxiety. So the main one is mentalimmunesystem.com. My website's williamtrubridge.com, and I'm on Instagram as Will Trubridge, Facebook the same, I think.
That's awesome, and I really appreciate you giving people a 15-day free trial. I think that gives everybody the confidence to try something new, get in there, and really learn something that could be so valuable to them. On average, how long do people typically take to go through the full program, where they reap the most amount of benefits, or is it something that once you start doing, it's like you always want to have be in touch with it a little bit?
I've seen people start to get benefits from it like immediately. As soon as there's 10 videos or 9 videos in the system, the first couple are kind of explaining the problem. But once you start to get to the third or fourth video and implement these techniques, then people are benefiting from them straight away. It does take a little bit of homework in order to successfully program the techniques into your subconscious. But it's kind of fun stuff, and it's stuff that doesn't take any additional time because you can be doing it while you're in traffic, while you're walking the dog, while you're at the hairdressers. These are the occasions where it's perfect to kind of put in practice these techniques. So, or at the dentist is a really good one, as I found out recently. So yeah, it's pretty painless to implement it. It doesn't kind of take very much additional time at all, and you will start to get benefits from it pretty much straight away. But I would say like sticking with it for at least kind of a couple of weeks to a month would be sufficient to kind of categorically reprogram the way that you respond to stress, such that afterwards a little bit of maintenance here and there, but it would be mostly self-sufficient.
That's really incredible, William. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. Is there anything that we have not yet covered that you would be remiss if you did not cover it with us right here, right now?
No, I think we've done like a good dive into the system and techniques, and yeah, I hope that your audience can benefit from them to a certain extent as much as I have.
And I think they definitely can, and that's why I was so excited to have you on this show here today. Thank you so much, William, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Michael. Cheers.